welcome to my channel. I am Andrea and this is Beyond the Pink Door, and today's video is a sew along for the Atelier Jupe-Lynn caftan, which I love. So this is my first one to make this year and I just know there's going to be half a dozen more. I just absolutely love it. I made so many of these last year and I wore them on rotation because they're just so comfortable. This is the Lynn caftan in the paper pattern. So this was designed and drafted by Atelier Jupe in collaboration with Belle Etoile Patterns, and it's just a knockout. It's a winner. I don't think if you made it you'd be disappointed. I just personally I love it. I think you can tell. So this time I made it out of this beautiful Atelier Jupe viscose, which is from their new collection. I just absolutely love all the colours in it. I love it. How many times am I going to say it? So I just know I'm going to wear this so much this summer. Hopefully we'll get a summer. So what is the Lynn caftan? It's a caftan. It is so comfortable. It's quite oversized, so I usually measure to a 38 in the Atelier Jupe patterns, and I generally make a 36 because I prefer that fit. Now I could easily have sized down, I think, again, but I love the roominess of it. In some of the hottest days last year I felt so cool and it was airy, and it was just so comfortable. Now I did find that the sleeve, the shoulder was actually quite far down my arm, so I did a narrow shoulder adjustment last year, and I did, I think, possibly a good inch. Now I don't show that in the sew along because I have my pattern since last year, and if you Google for narrow shoulder adjustments you'll find lots of them on YouTube. And from then on I just find I like it here more so. Now when I look at the pattern, the shoulder seam is down here on the model as well, so that is the actual design of it, but for me I just find that uncomfortable. I constantly just feel like my bra strap is down, so that's just one of my pet hates, just my little things, and it just annoys me. So the narrow shoulder adjustment just made it really comfortable for me. Now I think in the sew along I've shown you any of the alterations I've made, but I forgot to mention about the narrow shoulder adjustment. So this sew along has been requested simply because there's this lovely placket on the front of the dress. Now it's really lovely, there's no buttons on it, but it just tends to, you know, it's beautifully designed in that it just sits. Now I did find on one of mine last year I had to put a little stitch to hold it because for some reason or another, I suppose it depends on the fabric, it just kept kind of opening and I just felt a little bit exposed by it, but this just feels really lovely. It's a no-nonsense kind of a pattern, so there's a casing here and there's a belt that you make as part of the caftan and you thread it through, so it makes it really comfortable. I kind of miss pockets in it. That's the only thing. I think at some stage I may put pockets in it. Now it's just yeah, I don't use pockets, so this is my quandary. I don't use pockets. But I just like pockets. I don't know, are you the same? The sleeve is quite wide, but not over wide that it would like dip into your food or anything like that. There's a wide hem on the bottom of it, so I've turned up 1 centimetre and turned up another 2 centimetres. So again, nice and breezy, no cuff on it, like it's just perfect for the summer. So yeah, it comes in sizes 34 to 52, so that's a UK 6 to a UK 24. You could make a top as well. I did see Eva when I was in H&H Cologne recently, and she was wearing the top and it was really lovely, so I may try the top at some stage. So we sell the paper pattern and we also sell the PDF pattern. Now inside the paper pattern you have your instruction booklet with all your information, and you also have obviously your paper pattern. Now, just to explain about the paper pattern, it is printed on both sides, so if you are somebody who likes to cut out their patterns, you can't cut this out. It is definitely one for somebody who traces. Some of the pattern pieces are lapped on top of each other as well, but we do offer the service that we can print you the A0 pattern pieces if you want. If you are somebody who would prefer to cut it out like me, we can do that. It's in the description of the pattern on our website. It's an extra charge, but I think it's well worth it. So you can buy the PDF from us, you can buy it from Atelier Jupe if you like. I'll leave the links to all below. We sell the PDF where you can just buy the PDF, you can print it off at home, stick it together and make your lovely Lynn caftan, or you can buy the PDF and we can also print the A0 prints for you as well and post them to you. So yeah, loads of options, and again, all linked in the description box below. I'll also link this fabric, but any viscose fabric is going to be lovely in it. I've only made it in viscose. It would be lovely in cotton as well. I think it would be lovely in a viscose linen. I think that would be gorgeous as well. You could make it in a cotton lawn. I think it's got lots of possibilities. Definitely I would gravitate towards the viscose more so. Let me know in the comments if you find this sew along helpful. Let me know how you've got on with your Lynn caftan. Have you had any problems? How did you find the sizing? Yeah, and I'll try and help you if you have any questions in the comments. If you find the sew along helpful as well and you want to contribute to my channel, which is absolutely not necessary but appreciated, the links to my Ko-fi are in the description box below. So yeah, happy sewing your Lynn. So if you have the paper pattern, this is the little booklet inside. It begins with a Dutch description, then French, and then I'm popping on to page 31, which gives me the English description. Now that's a little bit brighter. So we're starting with your body measurements, your waist, your bust, your waist, your hips, and these patterns are made for 1.68 height. So there you'll find other measurements. Then you'll find your finished measurements here, which is really handy, and your materials here, which give you how much fabric and everything that you need. You need some interfacing, matching thread, and possibly a ribbon to tie through as the belt. Here is your fabric layout, so your cutting layout, that's exactly what I did. And then I'm going to draw your attention to this page on page 35, which I find is the most important page in it. So this gives you the list of the pattern pieces. It tells you how many and whatever to cut, and then it gives you the seam allowances, which I really like. So the seam allowances differ throughout the pattern. Mostly your side seams, your shoulders, your basic seams are 1.5, and I always find that around the neck they are 1 centimetre. And that's really helpful, I find, because around the placket you don't need the bigger seam allowance. It's just easier to sew with a smaller seam allowance. So I'm pointing it out there. So on say the front you have 1.5 centimetre around, so that's your shoulders. Your side seams, you've 1 centimetre at the neck and you have 3 centimetres at the hem, so it's got a deep hem on it. Same for the back. The placket has a 1 centimetre as well. Front facing is 1.5 at the shoulder seams, and then 1 centimetre around the neck. Sorry about all the noise, it's very windy and it's a horrible day today. The sleeve then is 1.5 centimetres around, and again it's got a 3 centimetre hem. So the casing around the middle is 1 centimetre and the belt is 1.5. Then it shows us here where it's going to interface. So you're going to interface the placket, the front facing and the back facing. Now this pattern slightly differs from the normal Atelier Jupe patterns in that there's more information on this one. Most of the other ones that I've seen have nothing written on it, and I always encourage people to write the pattern pieces on the pattern pages, or the pattern pieces. And then we have all the instructions, so we're not going to look at that because we're going to make it Andrea's way. Now when we go back to the measurements, I measure as a 38 in Atelier Jupe, and I usually make a size 36. Now I think I could have sized down on this one because it's actually quite a roomy make, but it is really comfortable on those really hot summer days where you just want something really nice and loose and floaty to wear. So this is the fabric I have decided. Oops, sorry. This is an Atelier Jupe fabric, one of their new collections. One of the fabrics from the new collection. This is your sleeve. You have a notch up here at the shoulder seam, and you have a notch here. There's no notch on the back. Then we have the back facing, which I've interfaced it. We have the front facing interfaced. This is the placket. Two of them are cut on the fold. This is the sign here that tells you that that's the side of the fold. I have a funny feeling that if you instinctively went to put this on the fold, that you'd put the longer side. So just be careful of that you've actually put the shorter side on the fold. Then you have the casing for the belt, and I have the belt cut as well. Now because I am only 5 foot, I find that these are quite long for me. So what works for me is if I cut out the front and back pattern piece without the extension piece that you have to stick on, and then the length is perfect. So that's the back piece. One of the first markings to make is where you want your casing for your belt. I put mine 3 centimeters higher, and that works for me. There's no notches on that to mark. Here's the front pattern piece, and I think you should be able to see there's a slight mark there where I've just chalked in where I want my casing to be. And then I would definitely encourage you to be very particular in the cutting out of the neckline, because that's the first thing you start with, and it seems to be the one thing that people keep asking me about. So I have a funny feeling that most people will only watch this video until I have the placket put in. Now, one little extra piece of interfacing for this that I find really helpful is you just about see a piece there. So what I do is I cut a rectangle here, I iron it in, and then I cut out my little gap from it, and that just makes sewing the placket so much easier. So they're all the pattern pieces, not too many. We're starting with the placket, so we're getting the difficult part out of the way first. So here's the placket pieces, and what we're going to do is fold them in the center, and we are going to sew, we're going to sew this top part here using a seam allowance of 1 centimeter. So we're going to do that on both, and then we're going to turn it the right side out and give it a press. Okay, so here we are at the neck. So you'll see the shape of the neck has a little curve here that goes into very slight change, like a little point. And here's our plackets. So that's how they look. Now, what has worked for me is raw edge to raw edge, and if we keep the length of the placket to be 2 centimeters below this line. So I'm getting my little measuring ruler, and that's 2 centimeters. Pin that into place and pin here. And our seam allowance for this is 1 centimeter. And I'm going to do the same, just check my 2. 2 centimeters. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start up here, 1 centimeter in, and I'm going to sew all the way down here, and I'm going to stop 1 centimeter here towards the end. So I'm going to stop 1 centimeter below, so halfway between that 2 centimeters, if that makes sense. Now you should be able to see where I've sewn down to 1 centimeter from the end, 1 centimeter from the end, and then up here at the top I've basically sewn right up to the edge of the placket. So the next thing to do is to flip it over and on the wrong side, zoom in there, we're going to cut a little snip between this corner point here and your last stitch. Now that's only on the fabric, not on the placket. So very carefully snip, and then there. So we've got this little shape. So if we look at it here from the wrong side, we can pull the entire placket now through because of that little corner that we cut there. And the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to overlock this raw edge and this raw edge, and I'm going to press that seam into the body. So I've overlocked the 2 side edges and I've also pressed. And I've also figured, okay, that I want the right placket to be over the left. So this is what I essentially want it to look like when it's done. So we have our raw edges down here, and we've also got that little extra flap. So this is where the fun begins. What we want to do then is get our right piece in line with the left placket. So I'm going to just put a pin there, and then what we want to do is pop out that extra piece we have. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pin it in place. And we're going to sew from that point there right across to that point there. And that's basically from where our little snip went right to our snip, and we want to be as accurate as we can to get into those 2 corners, because if we sew even slightly up from those 2 corners, we are going to end up with just a little tuck, which we want to try and avoid. So I'm going to sew right across there and see how that looks. So you can see, I hope, I've sewn right across, and my centimetre must have been very slightly off because really that should have lined up with that. And here's the moment of truth, how it looks on the outside. Oh, sorry. Okay, so it looks like there's a teeny tuck, but I think, oh no, that's okay. Once I get the iron at that, that looks pretty good. So let's put it down and see how it looks. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that. I think that looks quite good. So my next job is to overlock this edge here, and while I'm at that then I am going to overlock my shoulder seams, or my shoulder raw edges, and also my shoulder raw edges on the back, and also I have my facings. So I have my front facing, and I have my back facings, So I'm going to sew the shoulder seams of each of these together. I'm going to press them open. I'm going to overlock them, and I'm also going to overlock all around the edge. So here we have our facing. So these are our front facings, and this is the back. And as you see, I have done my seams, overlocked them, pressed them out, and I've actually overlocked all around the edge here as well. And then we have our neckline here. So I've done the shoulders. So here's the front, and there's the shoulder seams. And the next thing now we want to do is to attach the facing. So what we want to do for this is we want to turn our placket onto our front like so. So we have our overlocked edge here, and then we're going to get our facing and pin it to the shoulder seam, and then basically pin it in place. So you see the shape of the facing is the same as what we remember as the shape I pointed out of the neckline. And we're going to do that onto the other shoulder seam, center back, and then onto the other front. And then we're going to sew around. So actually I'm going to sew on this side, and that's simply because I can sew from my shoulder to the point here where I sewed the placket on, and then I'm going to sew right on top of the stitching that I previously did until the facing is sewn on. So what I'm doing now is I'm doing some snips just around the neck edge. They're about 2 centimeters apart. So if we look at how the neck looks now, fold back our facing, and this is how our placket just sort of streamlines straight into the neckline. What we're going to do next is we're going to understitch. So how we do this is, sorry, I'm trying to get a right angle here. I'm working with a tripod. Very difficult. What we're going to do is I'm going to press the seam that we've just sewn there. I'm going to press it into the facing, because that'll make it easier. And then I'm going to flatten everything out like this, and I'm going to sew about 1 millimeter away from that edge there on the facing with all the extra seam allowance underneath. And then what that'll do is that will stop this kind of curling going on when the front of it is finished. So I'm going to press that, and then I'll show you the understitching. So I have the placket flattened here. This is the front of the caftan, and this is the facing. So I can feel my seam allowances there, and I'm basically going to sew very close to this edge here, all along here. So you can see there, hopefully on the back facing, how it looks. So there's the understitching. Now I will say it's not my most beautiful work. I was trying to keep my hands out of the way for the camera, but see how effective it is. So it just makes sure that the facing stays there on the inside. It's so effective. What I like to do now is, because I absolutely hate facings popping over when I'm wearing things, is I like to line up my shoulder seams. I'm going to put a pin there. So that's one shoulder seam. There's the other shoulder seam lined up. And I'm going to do some stitches there by hand to hold the facing right onto the shoulder seam there, and that'll hopefully help it from popping over. Now sometimes what I do, only there's no top stitching on any part of the front of this, sometimes I will actually top stitch down the facing, so from the inside I would start sewing. I normally aim for the edge of the overlocking, and I will stitch that right through to the front of the bodice, and then that guarantees that the facing will stay where it should. So this is how we're looking. We're all placketed and faced, so we've got a nice finish there. I like this, the way it makes like a nice rounded neckline. Next thing for us to do now is to sew our side seams. So I always overlock first and then sew them. What I like to do is I like to put a slit at the end of mine. So personal preference, just works for me. So I have a measurement that I like. I think that's about 9 inches. Sorry for jumping between centimetres and inches, but that's about probably 20 centimetres possibly. And I've just put a little slit there, so I'm going to sew right sides together until I get to the slit, and then I'm going to basically backstitch. And when I'm doing the hem, then I'll hem around the slit. I just find that really a comfy look. Our next little job to sew is our casing. So we've got the two pieces, we've got two short ends. We're going to sew them together and sew these together. And then we're going to find the center point of one of them, and we're going to iron a piece of interfacing there because we're going to make two buttonholes there in order to thread our belt through. We also have our belt pieces. We need to sew these together. So I've sewn mine two together, and I'm going to press it open and then sew that. And yeah, that's our next piece to attach. So this is my casing piece. I've ironed on my interfacing in the centre front. I've done my two buttonholes. They are not the usual amazing buttonholes my sewing machine does. It decided to throw a tantrum in the middle, so I have them open, and the next thing I have to do is turn under the seam allowance on the top and the bottom of this casing. The other thing I've done is I've got my belt pieces together, joined them, put right sides together, and then sewed along. So what I normally do is, when I'm sewing a belt together, I turn down the first possibly half a centimetre and I sew on top of it, and I do the very same when I come to the end. So I turn back up a half centimetre, and then I find that when I'm turning it out, that little hem just slots inside the belt, so I don't have to do any sort of pushing it back in or that. Normally works. I'm using a loop turner to turn it the right way out. I have these in two lengths, and this one is slightly longer. So I have it all the way out to the end. You see the little hook there? We want to hook that into that little half centimetre. I'm all fingers and thumbs. And then close up the little hook, and then basically push the belt over, and then very slowly pull that bit out. Now you don't want to lose where it is on the hook, so if a piece gets a little bit tangled, push it out, and then just basically turn the belt right way out. And then I'm going to give it an iron, and then we're going to sew the casing onto the actual dress. I'm holding the little hook there because I don't want to lose it inside. Now it's raining. We've had the rain, the wind, the sun today. It's all going on. Now there it is at the other end, then just hook it off. And then just have to push this little piece back in, so that's my little half centimetre. Hook it back in, give it a roll, and then I'll give that a press. And what I actually like to do on these belts is I like to make a knot here on the end. So after it's ironed, I'll just make a little knot like that, and it actually looks quite nice. And it gives a little bit of extra weight to the belt as well. So I've pinned my casing around. I'm not fully pinned. It is a little bit of a fiddly job, so it takes plenty of pins. So here's my two buttonholes, and I've it pinned all the way around to the back. I will have to put lots more pins here. And then it's a matter of just going in, starting at one of the side seams and stitching close to the edge, top and bottom, and just make sure that none of the dress gets in the way. So if you've got a free arm, take the free arm off and kind of thread it into the sewing machine and sew. Now grab your sleeve pieces, and I'm going to overlock entirely around them, and then I'm going to put right sides together, and I'm going to sew my side seam and press it open. So apologies that the video sew along finishes here. I did film the insertion of the sleeves, which are very simple because you just match up your underarm. There's a notch here at the front, there's another notch at the shoulder. They go in with nearly no ease, they're really good. I put a 3cm hem on the bottom, so I turned up 1cm and then another 2cm, and that's a really nice hem because it gives the sleeve just a little bit of extra weight. And then I turned up just 1cm. I overlocked and turned up 1cm of a hem around the bottom. I also have slits on mine because I find that really comfortable. So yeah, I filmed all of that, but then when I went to edit I realised that my memory card on my camera had been full. So obviously I wasn't going to take out the sleeves to refilm that, but I think the most important part of this sew along anyway is to show how the placket is added in. So I hope that you enjoy the sew along, and apologies for my breathlessness, I'm still very congested. So yeah, welcome summer and hay fever. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye.